Hey everybody, and welcome to Hell is for Children. This show is on every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 2100 hours Central European Time. My name is Geerte Frenken, and this show is all about the topic of protective mothers and their children. So, what's a protective mother? A protective mother tries to protect her child or children from their abusive fathers by many means necessary, which is an uphill battle in today's global corrupt family court system that thrives on paternal entitlement. So welcome to a very special episode of Hell is for Children that is all about the topic of children who have been taught by their abusive father to reject their protective mother. This is a problem that many protective mothers seek help with and also approach me about, and so I figured why not do an entire show just on this topic to help all those moms and their kids. So today's guest is an expert exactly about this topic, and it's Jill Jones Soderman. And Jill is the executive director of the Foundation for the Child Victims of the Family Courts, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to guarding the constitutionally documented rights of children and their protective parents, challenged under circumstances of high conflict custody litigation and assault by Child Protective Services. Jill's initial practice has a focus as a psychoanalyst, a family and group therapist working as the clinical supervisor, and also faculty member teaching and supervising at inpatient, psychiatric, and residential treatment services. For the last decade, she also works as a mediator, forensic expert, author, public speaker, and whistleblower. Jill frequently deals with the topic of children who are estranged from their protective mother due to abusive fathers who teach their child or children to reject their mothers. And she's here with me today to help protective mothers and their children with ways to heal. So welcome to the show, Jill.
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for having me here today. This is an incredible subject that I don't think gets enough proper attention in terms of the incredible complexity and how painful and personally challenging it is for parents to attempt to reconnect with their children.
Yeah, I want to really focus on that because we have a lot of viewers who are protective mothers, and you know, their abusive exes have taught their kids to reject them by vilifying them, and these moms are at their wits' end trying to reach their estranged children. So what would be a way for these moms to achieve some level of healing in their relationship with their estranged kids?
Well, let's talk about what stage of connection they are with the children, whether they have custody of the children, whether they're involved in supervised visitation, whether they have no contact with them, whether they're attempting to write to them across, you know, these kind of supervised empty channels. There are a number of circumstances that you know that parents find themselves in. I'd like to address first the issue of how did the circumstance come about? How did the custody transfer occur that the parent that the mother became separated from the child? The way I approach the issue of this kind of forced separation from children is the atmosphere in which this arrangement has come about is highly pathological. The basis under which a child and parent are separated in this matter involves a highly disturbed, dysfunctional primary relationship. These types of custody situations where one parent is given complete and total control of a child, and the other parent is excluded, usually with the intervention of a court, and the court has been courted in terms of developing an attitude towards the dismissed parent that's highly negative towards that parent. So whether that the parent that is excluded is designated as a danger to the child, as being mentally ill, is being in some way unworthy of being being a parent to the child. And within the context of the court's situation, the lack of psychiatrically informed, analytically, dynamically informed context is from ground zero, an accepted platform that this creates an enormously complex and disturbing issue. The same problem exists where the court says, automatically both parents should have cooperative parenting, that both parents should be equally involved in the child's life, and everybody should get along and function well and be happy with each other. This is just not the real world. It's not what happens. Even if it's a very small percentage, if it's 10% of the population that deals in this very high conflict custody situation, is what we tend to find is, and the category, the description that I like to use is that one is dealing with an obsessed abuser. And obviously there are different levels of obsessed abusers, but we're generally dealing with somebody who has an agenda, who has either a secret to hide as to their own functioning with the child, and that they need to protect that secret. They need to protect the unhealthy aspects of the relationship, or that there's an enormous revenge factor, that the parent who has left the relationship, whether for good reasons or not, it has nothing to do with that, but that parent is seen as somebody who is rejecting and hostile and needs to be destroyed. And one way of destroying a parent and a protective mother is taking away their children and depriving them of the legacy of having a relationship with a child, having that imprint, and watching the development of the person that they gave birth to and loved and looked forward to development of that person. There are many different scenarios, and every individual has their own story and their own dialectic of what has occurred in the relationship and in the life. And there is no statement that covers, no practice that covers all of these stories. It is a highly individualized understanding that allows for effective treatment to go forward. We organize this material in terms of discussing, what is a family romance? What is the story that has led to this divorce and this separation, and what has gone on in the family?
Well, let me give you an example, because one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show with you today is a very, very dear friend of mine in the United States, who's been a single mom for 14 years now, and raised her child, I would say 95% by herself. Was a very wonderful, loving, gentle mom. And just, I've seen the interaction that she has with her child for many years. It's just awesome the way she raised her daughter. And the father is suddenly showing back up in in their lives, and has started a campaign of hate via the child to the mother, by telling the child that the mother is crazy and that the mother has made a mess of her life and that it's all been to the detriment of the daughter. And the daughter is believing this, and is now, pouring this toxic energy into the home life that she has with her mother.
Mm.
And the mother is at her wit's end because they used to have such an incredibly close relationship. And all of a sudden, here she is dealing with her daughter who wants to have nothing to do with her. She's on the phone with her father all the time, even during the mother-daughter time. And she doesn't know how to reach her daughter anymore. Her daughter's completely checked out. She's only on the computer, on her cell phone, and she doesn't know how to get back into a normal relationship, or whatever normal is, but I mean, really reach her on an emotional, spiritual, psychological level. So in a case like that, what would you advise this mother to do?
Well, let's talk about the backstory first, because it doesn't come out of no place. I mean, the child has nurtured feelings and, has her own thoughts and feelings and backstory that she may not have been aware of in terms of growing up, or been, I'm talking about the child now, been fully conscious of, or been aware of. But with the contact of the father, who sounds as if he's suddenly romancing, the daughter, has ignited her feelings, the child's feelings of the loss of having, the other parent. And it's also different for young girls having the attention of a male. There is a romance. There is a romantic, emotional attachment to one's father, to the image of the father. Where a father has portrayed himself as a victim, as that he was cut out of this child's life, that he was unable to have contact with her, that the mother somehow malevolently took her away, and he was unable to have contact. He was unable to access her or reach her, and that it wasn't his fault. It was the mother's fault. What one needs to be concerned about is the child's feeling that she's in fact missed something, that there's a part of her life that was taken away from her, not by the father, but by the mother. And that all of a sudden, this new relationship, this new shiny object, this new person who is paying attention and spending time and being interested and fascinated in her. How old is the child now? How old is she?
The child is 14 years old, and the mother never blocked contact between the father and the daughter, but the father just was off doing drugs for 10 years and wasn't interested.
We're not talking about the reality, where somebody suddenly shows up, and it's very often at adolescence, because adolescent girls are interested in men and older men, and the romance and the sophistication of being attended by an older man is very appealing. He's a father, but he's also a romantic figure, and the same is true of the father who comes into the life of adolescent girls. The interest of men who kind of rejoin the picture all of a sudden at this point is not because they're interested in family, or they suddenly miss this child and have thoughts about, what they've done, what they've missed out on. It's suddenly their own middle age is wearing on them. They become aware of it. Their own inadequacies, their own failures in life become present in their own consciousness. And to be suddenly have access to a young girl, a young woman who is all of a sudden adoring and has all of this empathy and concern for them, creates an extremely intoxicating bond. So you're dealing with a romantic attachment between a young girl and an adult man. And the adult man is as much of a child and an adolescent, because his whole behavior in the past has been irresponsible and has been destructive to the child and to the mother. I will get to what does one do about this, but the mother involved, the parent who's been this responsible, caring, stable person, is treated as if she'll always be there. She's always has been. She's an old shoe, somebody that is known, familiar with, and is not as interesting as this new person and this new preoccupation. It is a highly distressing, challenging, difficult issue for a parent in this position, and the need
Oh, you're kind of
to what the child is relating to, what she's responding to. It's kind of like having an internet predator. It's having somebody who is suddenly coming into your life, and this child who you've always had this close bond with is exploring the world in a different way. And developmentally the child is in a different emotional state and looking outward, and therefore anything that attempts to warn, to raise concerns is treated as if one is being limiting and getting in the way of fun. What to do about it is a complex issue in terms of moment to moment in interaction, in terms of attempting to deal with to open a dialogue in terms of what the child is feeling and why. A lot depends also on how intellectually curious and insightful the child is, and whether talking and insight and discussing feelings has been a part of the life and the relationship between mother and child, or whether it's been a functional relationship of raising a child and working and having a life. A lot has to do with trying to engage the child in terms of what she's thinking and feeling, and seeing if she can be curious about what happened, her curiosity about what her life with her father was like early in life, what her earliest relationships were, memories were with him. I'm sure if one starts to engage on that level, they're disappointing, that the memories are disappointing, at which point the child is going to be then angry at the mother, for raising those issues and raising those memories. So they need to be touched on, but with an understanding that you're not always going to get the best reaction in terms of what's going on. How does the father have contact with the girl now?
Yeah, he's fighting for custody, and this is, of course, the pattern that we see with most of the protective mothers, where at some point the fathers want to have full custody and go after full custody. And often, as we know, research has shown that 82% of abusive fathers actually end up getting full custody through the courts, because the family court is geared that way. The entire system is geared that way. And there's federal funding to promote this kind of pro-abuse system, as I call it. So there's a likelihood that the father will end up with full custody, and that the mother will end up with supervised visitation, because of course the mother is now, going to court and trying to retain the custody, but that's, I don't think she's aware yet of the fact that that the numbers are, stacked against her, unfortunately. And so this is something that's also going on in that process. So there's about a custody battle about to explode about this. And this is an issue because the daughter is 14 and can also now voice her own opinion in court, and her opinion is clouded by the entire backstory.
Right. And it's also clouded the ignorance and indifference of the courts. I mean, the courts are equal opportunity abusers. They're going to look at it, well, the mother's had all this time with the girl. Now he wants to come in and have a relationship. He's interfering with it, just transfer custody and let him have time and work out a relationship. And then the child is involved in something that she was completely naive to, would have no understanding of, or no anticipation of what the problems are going to be. If he succeeds in getting custody, and it's no longer fun. It's no longer just a hostile game with the mother and a romantic seduction with the girl, in terms of a maneuver, of a hostile maneuver towards the mother, and a romantic maneuver towards the girl, and a way to get positive attention for himself, to spin a story that deals with his guilt, whatever guilt there may be for abandonment, for channeling other hostility towards the mother that can be there. And this child has no awareness of what she's stepped into. Mothers in these situations need to, unfortunately, be incredibly patient and do a great deal of listening, and waiting out the storm. The focus needs to be on love of the child in this circumstance, and focusing on gearing this discussion towards memories of their life together, of what their bond has been, and talking to her about, had she missed her father? Was there a part of her life and her memory, that her mother wasn't aware of? Dealing with aspects of, was this something that she was aware of as a child? Did she think about not having her father around? And what did it mean to her? So there's a lot of, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to you to have him now and to not have had him in the past? So the pain and suffering and how unjust this situation is on behalf of the parent who's in this, you know, unequal situation, this you know, a situation which is uncalled for, and grossly unfair because of the inequity. She didn't ask for this. You know, she was doing what needed to be done. He has come and gone, and now he's chosen, you know, to come back into the picture and attempt to assert authority. And again, with the ignorance and ineptitude of a court that has very little interest in the dynamics or understanding of a family complex. The pressure with regard to the court should be on an assessment, on a fair and equitable assessment of the dynamic in the family, and towards both an original diagnosis as to what occurred, what brought the original separation about, and abandonment of mother and child, and why now? Why is this father back at this point, and what's going on at this point to make him a desirable parent for the child?
Yeah, the courts don't look at this kind of backstory. They have about 20 minutes per case, and they haul 50 cases a day through those courts. You know, it's like a machine that produces cases, and they don't look at the backstory. They just look at, oh, mom is stating that the father is abusive, so she must be you know, guilty of parental alienation, which is the term coined by Richard Gardner in the 1980s, that pedophile psychiatrist who ended up killing himself in a terrible way because of all the families he destroyed and all the children he harmed with his policies.
Right.
We all know that it's junk science, but it's still applied in the courts. And so this is a lot of the mothers face, right? We're trying to protect our children from these abusive fathers. Now we're accused of parental alienation. Custody is transferred to the fathers, who are now starting up this hate campaign against the mothers. Let's fast forward to a case of where this is actually...
Just stop for a moment, because it doesn't need to be this kind of scenario. There needs to be very active and aggressive advocacy on behalf of the mother, both in terms of the attorney and, you know, hopefully if she has access to a forensic advocacy, and for other kinds of intervention where the court is forced to stop what they're doing and to transfer the case into the hands of a family therapist. This is what we do. My earlier work was my first entree into this work was with an organization called FIT, Families in Transition, which I developed with another person, a protective mother, in fact, who was in a very high conflict divorce, in which she was a client of mine. We were able to navigate her situation very well. And as a result, she wanted to develop a format for dealing with protective parents who were facing this kind of court-ordered disaster. And we did, and we created, you know, FIT, Families in Transition. Families in Transition became a very popular program with the court, and the court became the referral source to us exclusively. And, you know, this is the direction in terms of forcing the courts to reform, that the Gardner protocol, these sick, depraved pattern of behaviors, begun by Gardner. It's absolutely correct. I'm very familiar with his work. I have done a great deal of writing about him, and it has, parental alienation is a construct. It's not a psychiatric diagnostic category. It has no scientific credibility whatsoever. Where my involvement is, with any family, it's always to press for the best circumstance on an adult level, and not just be caught up in the tide of the pathology of the courts, and to fight that tooth and nail.
So let's take another example. The example that I want to focus on is what most protective mothers find themselves in, and that is they're not at the point in the spectrum where they can bring in a therapist during the custody arrangements situation, but they've actually already lost custody. And now the child is in full custody of the abusive father. The mother's been put on supervised visitation. And let's take the situation of a mother who then maybe the kids are starting to age out of the system, and they're now trying to reestablish contact with their children. Or maybe they have been allowed more contact and they're trying to establish contact again, but they're finding out that the children don't want any contact. They're rejecting the mother. They have been, fed this nonsense story that mom is crazy, mom is dangerous, you shouldn't be around your mom. This is an important thing because, I'll give you an example. I did an interview with a protective mother who hadn't had any contact with her children in over 6 years. And once the show was recorded, I approached the children via friends and gave them the link to the show and asked them, would you please be so kind to give the link to the show to these children, because they haven't had any contact with their mom for 6 or 7 years, and they've only heard one side of the story. And maybe if they hear what the mom has to say, they would be willing to reestablish contact, because the mother has tried to contact the children and the children don't want to have anything to do with her. Those attempts have worked in some cases, but in most cases, the children will accept the link. They will, possibly look at it, I don't know, but there's not an immediate approach from the children to the mothers. I have also seen some positive outcomes, but in many of these cases, the moms are left saying, how do I reach my children? What would your advice be for those moms? Should they push that contact, or?
Well, first of all, again, it's the understanding of the context that they're in and what they're facing with the child. There are two immediate issues. It's not just the assault in terms of the child having been robbed of their memories, of their own thoughts, of their own reality of their life with their mother, and having to develop a fragile balance, and a fragile emotional balance in terms of living with their abuser. That a parent who inflicts information about another parent as saying they're ill, they're deranged, they're a danger to you. It is a terrible assault on a child's psyche. And what that child remembers about their parent, especially when there was a loving, positive relationship, is extraordinarily painful to them. And then to be robbed of that contact, and many times the majority of the times these children are just ripped away. They're pulled away in court circumstances, in very traumatic ways, and not allowed any kind of contact or any kind of meaningful contact. And then the mother doesn't know what the child has been subjected to in the home environment, and it's generally not good. The child, that if the parent doing this, if the father doing this had any love or concern for the child, they obviously wouldn't have done it in the first place, because it is such a traumatizing, painful, extraordinarily awful experience for a child to be ripped away from a parent, and then having to find a new emotional state and a new emotional balance. So the child has to construct some kind of reality that explains to themselves the absence of the mother, and the absence of that kind of caring, nurturing support. And very often that does involve, and especially given the age of the child, if the child is very, very young, infancy, toddlers, preteens, teenagers, the developmental stage of the child is tremendously important in terms of the emotional context and what kind of explanation the child is going to have in terms of understanding this. There's always the sense that the parent could have or should have done something, that it is impossible in terms of their imaginations. There wasn't something that the parent could have done to reunite them and to rescue the child and to protect them. There's always this early longing and emptiness in their psyches and in their emotional state, and missing the parent. So even if there is a level of irrational hostility that it's irrational, but it's there, and at a later stage in life, when there is contact again, that can be dealt with and that can be addressed. The parent, insofar as they're capable of it, and that it doesn't, create, such a painful and or destructive balance for the parent involved, that to maintain a stable, steady outreach in terms of a loving, supportive contact and stable objectification of who they are, saying that this was not their choice, that they did not ever consent to the separation, and it was and that they have always worked to return the child to them. The fear on the part of the child is that whatever kind of minimum stability they've achieved, whatever makes their lives tolerable in this situation, can be taken away. That the parent who has control of them and who their life depends on, that if that parent becomes aware of the outreach towards the other parent, that the child will be in grave risk. So maintaining the confidentiality of communication, and of outreach, and being able to have contact that is as out of the awareness of the other parent as possible, where contact can be arranged with private emails, with a private cell phone, that whatever contact can be made that is strictly between the parent and the child, would attempt to rebuild that relationship, and to reach the earlier memories, to also help the child and facilitate their immediate adjustment until the time comes that they can in fact be reunited. The balance of focus on helping the child in their current situation to not jeopardize the balance that's there, but also to nurture the prospect of being reunited with a child at such time that can be managed between them in a way that's agreeable to the child and the mother.
Let me stop you there for a second, and I want to share my screen and show any protective mothers and children who are watching the show right now. On my website here, if you go to the archives here and you click on March 2016, you see a tutorial that I actually created to set up a safe email contact with the protective mother. So this is for children. This is a YouTube tutorial I created for children on how to contact the How to Contact Your Mom guide. And it shows how to set up a safe and secure email account that cannot be hacked and tracked. You make a username that's different from your actual name. You never bookmark the email account that you create, and you do not want to access this email account from your own computer or from your cell phone, because your father might have installed spying software on there through which he can keep track of your passwords and whatever you're doing. And this is a wonderful 10-minute YouTube tutorial for children who are being held hostage by their fathers and not allowed to have contact with their mothers. It is extremely important for you, if you're watching this, to get in touch with your mom and to establish that contact in that confidential way that Jill is talking about here. So you are not robbed of the essential contact with your mother and the grandparents on your maternal side, and uncles and aunts and cousins and friends, because it's not just mom that you're missing, but also an entire maternal network that's being cut out. And you have the basic human rights to have contact with your mother and the maternal side of your family, no matter what a judge decides. So take it from me, if you're a child being held hostage by your father and there's a judge who says you may not have contact with your mother, disregard that judge. You are allowed, for me, to disregard that nonsense, because you have the basic human right to be in touch with your mother at all times. And of course, you need to do that in a safe way so you will not be retaliated against by your father. And this is the tutorial on how to do that. So again, go to my website, freejasmine.com, and go to the month of March, and you'll see this tutorial.
I want to say also in terms of this, in terms of a child who does make these advances, who uses a friend's phone to contact a mother or family, who takes any kinds of steps outside of the control of an overwhelming presence, it's incredibly important for that child to begin to access their own autonomy, their own strength, to reach beyond the confines of a restrictive and frightening and intimidating presence, because that's their road to freedom, and that's their road to emotional health. On the other hand, the parent has to respect uh, the fear of the child, and can't say, all right, then I'm going to go to court. I'm going to use these communications to show how unhappy you are and how much you want to be reunited with me. Because if it becomes an issue where the parent then uses the communication to then go back to court and to before the child is ready for that, and before the child is engaged with the parent to do that, and it's part of a mutual plan, then that's very, very destructive. And sometimes it's a long time. Sometimes it's a long period of time that the child, and again, depending on their age, feels like they can grow, that they can become stronger and more outspoken, and then also speak to parents and to other parents of friends, to teachers and school counselors, and have much more of an independent voice. But having that independent access is incredibly important, and it's something that we do work on a sub rosa basis with all of our parents who are separated from their children.
I'm all for that. I'm all for empowering the children in taking action and doing so in a safe way. There are children to be known to go on YouTube and tell their story. And I want to share my screen for a second and show the viewers where they can find this material. Again, on my website, freejasmine.com, you go to the reflection page over here, and you scroll down below this picture here. There are several links here of children who've gone out and talked about their hostage situation publicly. We have Victoria here, who is still a hostage in Spain. If you click on this link, it'll take you to a video where she describes her ordeal, and it's a scream for help. Sabrina and Alex, who are still hostages in the United States, go out on the internet, and it's a cry for help. These children are currently stuck with their father and in desperate need of rescue. So if anyone knows where they are, please reach out to them. Again, you can click on this link. It'll bring you to their YouTube video. You can listen to James here, who is a U.S. survivor. He is now an adult, and he describes what it was like to be separated from his mom for a large amount of his childhood, and how it has affected him. And it's tragic. Here's Brian. It's an interview I've done on a previous episode when the show was still on Blog Talk Radio, who describes what it was like to be forcefully taken from his mother and placed with his abusive father. He is now reunited with his mother, and I'll stop sharing my screen here and talk a little bit about Brian. Brian was reunited with his mother, and for about the first year and a half, he vented all his anger on his mom without even really realizing, of course, what that was about. So I thought that was a really important interview, because during the interview, we kind of explored the anger, and he during the interview, came to the conclusion that it was his anger, his frustration, and his grief of missing her that caused the anger to unfold. And for the mother, it was extremely difficult, because she had been fighting in court for years and years and years to get her kid back, and then finally he comes back in her life, and here's all this anger that then washes over her, which is like the last thing that she expects. And I want the mothers to understand the anger. And Brian understood the anger during the interview, and he said, yeah, actually I wasn't angry at my mom. I realized what I had been missing, and that is what came out. And the interview, later after the interview, they contacted me and they said, that interview was so healing to us, and we have now grown so much more close, because the anger issue is gone. We understand it, and it's evaporated. And
Right. But it's possible for them to express anger when they're reunited, and there's a hopeful situation, and there's a holding environment where you have a loving parent who is willing to endure the torture of hearing this. But for a child, when they are alone and in a hostage situation, to to be flooded with the memories of love for a parent is so enervating. It is so, there's such despair that it is it's excruciatingly painful for the child. And it is, in fact, unfortunately, healthier for them to be angry and to be mobilized, because it then pushes them to survive and pushes them to find areas of gratification that then keep them going. Because if they're only focused on the despair of loss, it's just, it leads to suicide. It is a critically horrendous, more dangerous situation. So rather keep the child alive, have them do whatever they need to. When you get them back, you deal with the consequences of that. You deal with healing that situation. And the insight and the awareness and the resolution does come. And even for parents who get children back after a long period of time, and there's a period of hostility and rejection, and a seeming coldness, what one often finds is that when those children become young adults, marry, and have children of their own, that there's an epiphany, that there is a desire to seek out the lost parent and to then go back and explore. So it's never gone. The longing for that lost parent may be filled with anger and hostility and explanations, but for most of these families, there is a point there is some juncture that the chances for reunification and re-exploration can do occur.
This is incredibly important and hopeful points that you're making, and I'm so glad that you're mentioning this, because you just mentioned the possible suicides of the children,
Yeah.
how important in fact it is for them to dissociate so they can survive the ordeal, the hostage situation. Equally important is the mental and psychological stability for the protective mothers who have been robbed of their children, and the hostility they are possibly facing coming from their children. Because what you're offering here is hope, by saying at some point these children will become parents themselves. Mm-hmm. And at that point they will start thinking, wait a minute, but what has really happened in my childhood? And they will at that point go back and retract their steps. What has happened? And at that point the questions will come. And to all the protective mothers that are watching right now, I know that is a difficult thing to hear, because that means you might still have to wait a decade before you get to that point of true emotional and psychological reunification. However, that point is going to come. I have a tattoo on my arm that says, "This too shall pass." Mm-hmm. Yes. If I can give you any hope out there to prevent you from committing suicide, to all the protective mothers who are watching right now, is that this shall pass as well. It will come to an end, and eventually the child who becomes an adult will start mending the split parts of their psyche, right? I mean, they're 50% mom and they're 50% dad, and they have to integrate what has happened. And that integration process might be a painful one. It might be one of where they first self-harm or do drugs or act out or show promiscuous behavior. But even such a way of acting out, such crises can be turning points to where the psyche is basically screaming out inside, like, I want to become whole again and I need help with this. So even if your child is out there doing drugs and acting out, and there's several moms who are contacting me about their children who are completely getting into serious trouble at age 14, 15, 16 because of this. Please know that that's very difficult to go through. Yes, it's very hard to see your child on this self-destructive path, but in a sense, it's also a sign of something healthy, because it means that their soul inside is screaming out for help, for attention, to reach this healing. And we need to be strong as mothers. We need to stay together and be really strong mentally, emotionally, and psychologically to be there for when these children come and finally seek that reunification with that part that they have missed.
Well, for mothers who are going through this, it's horrendous from every standpoint. It's their own incredible loss and frustration, and they're bombarded from every end because of the level of helplessness. For them to have be isolated, to not feel guilty and at fault, but to constantly have the affirmation of the reality that they have faced, what they've gone through and what they've fought for, and to look for every opening, for every juncture that arises, to be able to reconnect with children and to be able to claim their lives back, to claim an important part of their lives back. And there are rarely, if any, I never say never to any circumstance, that there are very rarely children who at some point in their life do not want to connect with a lost parent, because the hole in their psyche and in their heart is there. They're the drive to reconnect is alive at all stages of life, and it's just at what point in life the opportunity presents itself.
And now there's also parents, moms that contact me, and for example, I had Coral Annika Thiel on my show, whose children are surrounded by a cult, Christian cult. So the children are completely embedded in a community, in a family that's reinforcing the toxic message of the abusive father. That vilifies the mother. I so feel for her, and because she would love to have contact with her children, but for her it's not a matter of seeking them out. They're all grown up now. She can approach them, but these children are brainwashed to the hills. What can a parent, a mom like Coral, do to reconnect with her children?
That's a tough one. If children are part of a community and they're adults, and their identity and their social status is connected with a community of people who all believe in the same manner, it's being present and available for that point in their lives, and there will be a point in their lives at some point where there's a crisis, where there's a personal crisis that allows for a rethinking of what's meaningful in their lives, and a questioning of the status that exists for them. It's being present and available, and having a point of access.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I started my website. The brainwashing that's going on, one of the ways to get around that is to use the internet to get your story out there. This is one of the things that I want to train and help moms to do, to get their stories public, not just to raise awareness about the plight of what they're going through, but also to reach the children. So let me share my screen here and show you what I did to achieve that. So we're back here. This is basically the website I built about my daughter's case. And over here is a summary, and then here is the actual story where I go year by year by year to describe what has happened, how I met the father, what happened during divorce, how the whole thing went down in the court system, all the people that were involved. So one of the reasons why I did this, again, is not just to raise awareness about the plight of my situation and those of all the other protected mothers out there, but also for my daughter to find this, because she has lived this with me. These are the memories that she has with me. Like if I go to 2006 or something, she'll see the house that we lived in and have memories of that. She'll have this memory as well. Let's fast forward a little bit. She will see pictures of me and her, and she'll remember what it was like. And yes, those memories might be painful. However, it will break down the brainwash, because everything that I wrote here is absolutely truthful and factful, and she will know that I'm out there, that I'm fighting for her, that I have not forgotten about her, that the nonsense stories that are being told that I have abandoned her are not true. And this will in fact be helpful for her to be empowered to seek the contact, to understand that the things that are being told to her are nonsense, and for her to think for herself. And this is something that I bring up in every show that I do for all the children out there. Think for yourself, please. Make up your own mind. Go back into your memories and think, was my mom really so dangerous and so crazy? And if you go back and you think back and you know that that's a lie, then stand up for the truth and reach out to your mom. Your mothers are suffering out there without the contact between you and them. And we need to get on a path of healing, everybody.
I just want to say, though, that the child is in the hostage situation. The other parent, however painful it is not in a position of danger. They're not the hostage. They're not the victim. So the person in the situation has to figure out how to survive, and survive to the point that they can get out of the situation. So being compliant and being even psychologically compliant may be a method of survival for them at the time. To be able to have a private, personal scenario of their own thoughts and their own feelings, and to be able to nurture that for themselves is incredibly important. But the position of the parent seeking the child always has to be from the position that the child is the victim, and that the child is surviving in an intolerable situation. One of the issues that is so horrendously, seriously deranged about the courts is a lack of recognition of the court's normalized removal of children from the parent. Any position that suggests that a child be removed from a loving parent is in any manner, shape, or form a normal or therapeutic position is highly disturbing. There are indeed situations where children have to be removed from a parent, where a parent is a pedophile, is physically abusive in various ways, and who is using the child for their own gratification, their own needs, whether it be for revenge or their personal libido. That's a whole different issue, and that is understandable to the child. These more subtle psychological defenses and adult issues are 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 more subtle, but should not be to court proceedings. And yet the court does, some summary proceedings that are based on the judge's sense of their own marital life and their own, relationships to their children and their parents, without a more in-depth, objective understanding of scientifically what is in fact going on in the dynamic of a family.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we also face as protective mothers is supervised visitation. Let's talk about that. When I still had supervised visitation with my daughter, which was cut in May 2015, but when I still had it before May 2015, there was supervised visitation, which I think, by the way, is ridiculous, because why does it need to be supervised? I don't have any classified information to transmit to my daughter that would be in any way dangerous to her. But the supervisor would tell me that I basically could only talk about the weather and school, and I wasn't allowed to have a normal conversation with my daughter, like, how are you feeling? That question I was not even allowed to ask. And this creates an extremely strange situation for the child. Because here there's protective mother who tried to protect the child from molestation and abuse and neglect, and this mother is now supervised, but there's unsupervised, full contact, full custody with the abuser. Can you explain from the perspective of the child, what is that like for the child to be put in that type of position?
It's totally confusing on one hand. It is an empty and futile communication. They also don't allow any physical contact. There's no hugging or kissing or touching. You're like prisoners sitting across a table from each other. It is completely surreal. It's usually far more depressing and confusing to a child. And again, depending on developmental stage, from young children to pre-adolescence to adolescence. It's such an unreal circumstance. I had a situation in which children had lost two sisters, had lost an older sister who died of a medical issue when she was, a young adult, and this sister was somebody who was just another mother and a very beloved sibling. And in supervised visitation, the children and the mother were not ever able to discuss the death of this older sibling, and it was very fresh. The children were suddenly removed into the hands of a highly pathological, vindictive father who was a sexual as well as emotional abuser. And their sister died shortly after they were taken from their mother and not allowed to see her or speak to her, and only in this very, very restrictive supervision. They were suddenly removed from the very loving hands of their grandparents and their many cousins and many, many friends into this, very abusive and sterile relationship. And they were not allowed to discuss their sister at all. And it was extremely, extraordinarily distressing and confusing. And as part of the dark side of the confusion is the message that they, this whole out there group of people are saying that the mother must be dangerous in some way. There must be something wrong with her if they're kept under this tight control. The children were 8 and 11 when they were taken, and despite having had a very loving relationship with their mother, who was indeed an extraordinarily nurturing and protective parent, they were afraid of her. There was a sense that that she must have done something, that there must have been something going on. So the message to children, from supervised visitation is that the parent is on some level dangerous, and the message that is meant to get through is that the court was justified, that the custodial parent was in fact justified, and that justification is supported by the actions taken of the court, because why would the mother then be under supervision? So the subliminal message is a very vicious and dangerous one.
So how can I, if I would be set up with Skype visitation with my daughter again, how can I communicate to her that I think this is a ridiculous situation?
It's more than ridiculous. It's an outrage, and the message needs to be, and I do this very, very directly with children, is that what is happening with you and with your parent whom you are deprived of seeing is unlawful, that this is a criminal act, and it is a criminal act enacted by the courts and by the ignorant authorities who are acting not in your best interest or the best interest of your family.
Right, but I'm not allowed to say that to her.
No, but there will be openings when you can. At this point, we'll discuss this later. Yeah. What is going on right now, we can't talk about at the moment, but we will. We will have an opportunity to talk about it. Yeah, and it gives you an opening.
Right, because and this goes for all the protective mothers out there. The supervised visitation is used as a continued tool of coercive control. Not only is it criminal, not only is it unlawful, not only does it break all human rights violations, it is a method of domestic violence by proxy. And the way this unfolds, for example, I showed my daughter some personal belongings. I showed her room on Skype, and at that point, all hell broke loose, mm-hmm. Right? And I talked to the supervisor about this, and I said, why am I not allowed to show my daughter her room and her personal belongings? Because it doesn't say anything in the court order that I'm not supposed to do that. And she said to me, it will give your daughter hope. And I said, well, do we want as a society for our kids to be hopeless?
Yes, yes.
And she had no answer to that, because right. When my daughter cries herself to sleep at night because she misses her mom, it would be nice for her to see her personal belongings, her toys, her clothes, her books, her things, and know that I'm here and I haven't forgotten about her. And the supervisor said, no, your daughter needs to be hopeless. It's an absurd world that we live in, don't you think?
It is depraved. It is ignorance and brutality to the nth degree. The idea that the child has to be forced to adjust to an inhumane reality. First of all, they don't. I mean, nature pours a vacuum, so children will imagine, they will fantasize, they will create what isn't there. Sometimes they create it negatively in terms of thinking, well, my mother has gotten rid of everything. I'm not there anymore. I'm not, meaningful. But knowing that that place is preserved, that physical location is there for her, and that there will be a return, because there will be a point at which the parent can not any longer exert control. Unfortunately, it's 16 or 18 or 14, depending on the jurisdiction. If one simply complies with court rules. We're of the position, the Foundation for the Child Victims of the Family Courts is always of the position that as long as the child is alive, you fight for those rights, that you fight for evidence that the child is in the hands of an of dislocation from them is part of evidence of physical, psychological abuse and neglect of the child, and grounds for an immediate transfer of custody. Because no sane person who has any kind of concern or compassion for a child would ever subject this to them as this kind of inhuman torture.
That is exactly my point. The fact that, for example, in my situation, and in examples of other protective mothers who are in my situation, who are not allowed to have any contact, where the father has broken all court orders and the judge is not doing anything about it, we can conclude that these people who are enacting this have severe pathology. They have severe disorders. I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but I know that there's something completely wrong with these people.
Right.
And I love
and that's the group of people that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
People who cause children to be in supervised visitation are that group of individuals who are suffer from either secrets to hide or a sadistic form of obsessed abuser psychopathology, that they should not be in possession of the children in the first place.
Right. I mean, the court should just be able to conclude like, oh, mother has not been allowed any contact. There's something seriously wrong with the father.
Right.
We need to immediately remove the child from this man, because he has no clue what kind of damage he's doing to the child.
On the other hand, you have courts transferring children into the hands of their abusers when a protective parent files charges. And I'm not talking about false charges and false allegations. I'm talking about situations in which the child is clearly evidencing symptomatology that is consistent with psychological and physical abuse of the child. These symptoms are not random, and they are not inconsistent with a clear and convincing pattern of abuse. The unwillingness of a court to investigate and take under very serious consideration the profferings of a child who is experiencing this kind of trauma and evidencing severe regression and resistance to seeing a parent, where they're biting, kicking, screaming, trying to express, their fear of seeing this parent. These are symptoms that need to be taken very, very seriously. And sending, armed police to remove the child from a protective parent into the hands of the abuser is beyond imagination to me. And yet, we see it, and we fight these kinds of cases. So, the insistence that a parent either be removed from a parent that they love or transferred into the hands of a parent that the child is objecting to is an equal form of insanity and a clear symptom of the dysfunction of the American courts.
Yeah, it's not just dysfunction, it's an outright crimes against humanity, and we will hold every single individual for such actions responsible, whether that be on a low level or on a high level, but these people will continue to be exposed, and every single one of them. I want to share my screen with the viewers and show the foundation that you're the executive director of, the Foundation for the Child Victims of the Family Court. And this is a nonprofit organization composed of family mediators, attorneys, forensic law investigators, therapists, counselors, pediatricians, and other professionals who are dedicated to aggressively assisting parties who are involved in these types of contentious child custody cases, or families who have been harmed by the abuses of family court systems throughout the 50 states. And I'm very happy to announce that the Foundation for the Child Victims of the Family Courts has taken on Jasmine's case. I'm publicly announcing that right here and right now on the show. For all those viewers who have been praying for Jasmine and for me and for her grandmother and uncles and aunts and everyone that's involved in this tragedy that has been unfolding in our family, I can say that after 27 months of fighting and raising awareness about my case, Jill is the angel that has come onto our paths. And is here to hold the individuals that are participating in this hostage situation responsible and accountable for their actions in by many means necessary and in many different ways. And I am extremely impressed with the work that you're doing, Jill, because what's so important that the mothers also, the protective mothers out there that are in this, that they realize that, we're up against psychopaths. And so the person that is going to be fighting this battle with you and for you needs to be of a full understanding of what it's like to deal with psychopaths or sociopaths, whatever you want to call it. This is was one of my main challenges. It's like, okay, so here I have an attorney, and the attorney doesn't understand what's going on, and then eventually gets sucked into the nonsense story of opposing party and uses the opportunity to fleece me for money and then leaves me high and dry. Here, you are someone who completely understands that this is a pattern that's happening, and that the folks involved are criminals. They have a moral bankruptcy, so to speak, within this society, and inflicting gross human rights violations that will impact generations to come. So,
let me say, this is the whole basis of family therapy, of psychoanalytic, psychodynamic understanding. This isn't an argument that one can argue from both sides. It's not like, proof of where life begins or ends, the chicken or the egg. This is the situation. It isn't this or isn't that. This is the accurate understanding of the situation. It's in psychoanalysis when a therapist when an analyst makes an interpretation. If the interpretation is correct, you connect with the person. Then there's more material that comes. Then it is a fruitful production. When the interpretation is not correct, it falls flat. It goes no place, and it isn't for the person who's making the interpretation to decide whether that interpretation is correct. The results express themselves. What is going on in these family situations it's not arguable. It could be the mother, it could be the father. No, it is one or the other, and the child will tell you, and the child is part of it. There is a ground zero. There is an answer to what's going on. That answer may not come instantly in terms of one interview or one one, quick evaluation. But the answers are there, and they're not brain surgery. They do come fairly quickly and fairly reasonably. And there's a way of going about these investigations in a very intense and balanced way, which involves an evaluation of all parties around, and collateral contacts, and dealing with factual information, not simply hearsay as to one compelling person's story or the other. The difference between a psychopath and a sociopath is a psychopath, their crimes are directed against people. The crimes are inflicted against vulnerable populations. Sociopath deals with society, with institutions of a criminal nature. It's a difference between a bank robbery, stealing money, and murder. One is up close and personal, and the level of guilt and failure of empathy in these situations.
Yeah, and I've discussed this on prior shows that such conditions can be actually measured with MRIs, and this is really something I am fighting for to achieve, that when these types of cases appear in front of the court, that such MRI brain scans are applied to the individuals, because if there is a lack of electrical activity in the brain that shows and evidences a lack of empathy, then there, those are facts, and those are facts to make decisions based on. Wouldn't you agree?
It's an interesting direction, and it's an area that science isn't developed in enough at this point. You're into a whole other universe of control and megalomania that's potential. There are areas of that has more to do with collaborative work. The area of MRIs and brain scans and so forth have transformed the world of ADD, attention deficit disorder, and has caused the treatment of ADD to be so much more sophisticated and so much more successful for people who truly have attention deficit disorder, and have made it so much more complex and well balanced. One hopes that in the future the scientific level of investigation will come into play, but at this point, or whatever the best practices they're so capable of being used in a dark way, in a psychopathic way, where wonderful science and wonderful investigative skills can be co-opted and used against the best interests of everybody around. So until we develop a more humane and reasonable society, and can and value those principles, we're not safe in bringing those into the court control at this point. Even psychological services and treatment services are used in such a despicable and depraved way. I mean, anybody who has had a corrupt psychoval, knows how completely disabling it is to be faced with an expert who's making evaluations of you and statements of you that are completely inaccurate and unfair, and that you have no reciprocity in terms of responding to them.
That's excellent. You're making a really excellent point. So we can basically state that all tools can be used for nefarious reasons, and it is the intent that counts. And that brings it back to a real basic and spiritual standpoint, that if we are here on the planet to bring heaven to earth, to create heaven on earth and not to create hell on earth. And as long as professionals who are in situations where they have decision-making authority over children, which are the most vulnerable population on the planet next to animals, as long as they don't have the right intent, none of any of the ideas that we bring forward have a chance of succeeding, because they can always be used for the wrong purposes.
Where you see a court system dealing with one set of evaluators uniformly, that's not a healthy situation. There should be a long list and the capacity of each individual to choose their own providers. They should not be provided through the courts. There should be a tremendous amount of autonomy, and clients should be able to rate and evaluate the people who, every single person that they come into contact with who has authority over them. It should be absolutely a two-way street in terms of that. But the capacity of mental health professionals, attorneys and judges to dismantle people's lives is a system that itself needs to be dismantled. And it can be done by having clients of the court evaluate the providers.
Yeah, and another thing I'd like to add to that is that the industry that's currently present, where these particular individuals who call themselves professionals are setting their own outrageous hourly fees, this must also start to get monitored, because now it's a money-making business. It's a for-profit, pro-abuse business. It's a corporation that profits from its victims, and financial incentives and human rights do not mix. We must take the financial incentives out of these individuals as well.
Absolutely.
So we have about half an hour left, and what I want to focus on next is the children. If you had the opportunity, which I'm presenting to you now, to talk to the children who have been in the custody of abusive fathers or who are currently in the custody of abusive fathers, what would you tell them? What is your message to them?
I do that all the time. Every day, I'm constantly in touch with children who are in the hands of their abusers. It's always a message of, together we will get you out of this. In today's horrible circumstances, among the best ways of getting children out of the hands of their abusers is to have children help in collecting evidence of what has gone on. That children being able to gather evidence in the form of recordings, audio and visual recordings of events as they are occurring. To collect evidence even of their own abuse, even of their own rapes as they occur. The more empowered children are, even under the most horrendous circumstances, and I cannot even begin to tell you about how horrible it is to have to talk to children about collecting semen after they've been raped, and secreting the evidence of what's happened and getting it to authorities, getting it to somebody, having pictures taken of them, to do anything to make the experience mean something. That whatever has happened, it needs to lead to a remedy, to have something better happen to them. But I deal with this all the time, and I am always amazed at the unbelievable creativity and resilience of children. And where there is that connection, especially to their own ability to be freed, to get out of the situation, their recovery from the absolutely horrendous, mortifying circumstances is absolutely amazing.
So let's say one of these children has been raped and they have this evidence now. Where should they take it? Should they go to the police or to CPS or to their teacher, or?
They put it in an envelope and seal it.
Yeah, and then where do they take it?
They try to mail it. They try to mail. Well, I'll tell you one of the things we try to do is we have them put it in an envelope, seal it, write their name across the sealed envelope, time and date, and if they mail it to either themselves, if that's possible in some way, or they mail it to some confidant, and have the
Okay, you're kind of dropping out. So hold on for a second. I want to repeat. I want to make sure that information comes across. So a confidant, for any kids that are watching right now, confidant means someone you really, really trust.
Someone who you trust. Someone you trust.
Put it in a plastic baggie and then put it in the envelope.
Also, if you can, this is really disgusting, but if you can cut in half the sample, and keep a portion of it in your own, in some secret place for yourself, and mail the other part of it. Get the other part to somebody. Have bruises. Whatever happens, whatever is going on, if it can be recorded in some way, if you can contact somebody and have them hear what's going on, so that they can, in some circumstances, they can call the police and have the police arrive. Make sure that the circumstances go, get recorded and get reported to somebody, to somebody in authority. Not CPS, not the Department of Social Services, not Child Protective Services. It needs to go to the police. It needs to go to the sex crimes units.
Okay, that's really good information. And one of the things that I plan to do is start a global platform for protective mothers later this fall. And I will set up a page on that website specifically for children as to what they should do in situations like this, and not to go to CPS, but to really find someone they can trust, who they know will not destroy the evidence.
And to keep part of it, to keep it and to make sure it's sealed, and that it's written across the sealed portion of it. It's called chain of custody. I also want to say, that children have their own innate sense of justice, and the sense of, why is this being done to me? Why is this happening? I always put it in terms of, that this person was a child at some point as well, and very bad things happened to them. And at some point in their life, they were at a crossroads. They could decide whether to become a bad person or a good person, and they made a bad choice.
Mm-hmm. This is exactly how I explained it to my own daughter. I said, your father was abused as a child, and then he made the choice as he became an adult not to work on that. And then this is the result of that. Because we all have the responsibility as adults to look at our lives and seek help to heal. So we're not passing on damage that has been inflicted on us to others. So one of the things that we haven't touched on is Stockholm syndrome.
Yes.
Let's get into that. Maybe you can explain a little bit to the audience what that is and what the results of that can be and what we can do about it.
Stockholm syndrome has to do in life and death situations where the victim feels that their life is in the hands of the perpetrator, of the abuser. And in the course of that passage, there is something that transpires between the victim and the abuser, where the abuser shows some compassion and some feeling for the victim, and a very distorted relationship transforms, where the victim feels that the abuser in fact cares for them, and that there is an alliance between them, that there is something special between them. It is a very very tortured rationalization for what has transpired. And the fundamental issue of it, the fundamental dynamic of it, is hope, that the victim experiences a sense that they have some control over a situation in which they have absolutely no control, and that if they experience themselves as having no control whatsoever, they would simply give themselves over to death. And one often sees in crime situations where a victim is in the hands of an absolute depraved psychopath, where the victim says, just kill me, just get it over already. And the psychopath does. Where you have a Stockholm syndrome, it is the attempt of the victim to access some form of illusionary control, and to attempt to work with the situation and to deal with the abuser as if there's an alliance between them, or an attempt to forge an alliance in order to save their own lives. The highly pathological level of this is that sometimes the victim then really experiences themselves as crossing over, and believing in the relationship with the abuser, that reality abyss is crossed, where the victim really does become aligned with the abuser, and the whole imaginary construct of the relationship is something very unique to the dynamic, to the victim and abuser. And then the analytic process is to work with the victim over the trauma of what they've experienced and what that love relationship is about, because it does become a love relationship when a victim is, as we say, Stockholmed, that they have crossed over to a belief in the beneficence of their own abuser, that they've broken with reality, and their own imaginary, illusory interpretation of the experience has taken on its own life and its own form. That's what Stockholm syndrome is about.
Now, when those children who are Stockholmed are returned to the protective mother, or reunited with the protective mother at a later stage, What is the best way for these protective mothers to get these children to connect with their true inner selves again, so to speak?
Well, first part is not to confront the reality of what in fact went on, or to confront the evil of the abuser. Um, it's called joining the defense. That one is grateful that their abuser allowed them to live, and to join the appreciation of the fact that the child was allowed to live. And as the trauma resolves, I mean, these children experience, apart from the situational stress disorder, the post-traumatic stress disorder is beyond imagination. So one has to deal with the experience, the trauma, the fantasy, and not confront the reality.
And you also stated to me in an earlier conversation that we've had on this topic that it's not necessarily a good idea to do EMDR, eye movement rapid desensitization therapy, which is for the viewers that are watching that don't know what that is, EMDR is a treatment methodology that helps people that have experienced traumas. But in this case, you don't recommend that, correct?
I don't ever recommend EMDR. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's another form of psychological rape. You don't allow an electronic process to take hold of your mind and your memories. It's an unfolding within a relationship and within a time frame that is acceptable to the person, to the client. I know that people, want to get over things quickly, and, want a process to work quickly and move on. There's a great deal of psychological work that needs to be done on the part of somebody who has experienced a trauma, and to do it in a forced method. The return of the symptoms. I mean, they may be suppressed for the moment, but they come back, and the work is not finished.
So the best way to nurture the traumatized Stockholm child would be to start up life in a new rhythm and start fresh. And nurture the child as best as possible?
To be grateful for their life and for their well-being, and to move along. There's nothing as therapeutic as pleasure, as life moving on in a happy and healthy way. The trauma will surface, the depression and the anxiety and the fearfulness will be around, and one deals with it, in the course of time. But one attempts to deal with it as a piece of life, and not as an entirety of life, and to encourage the strengths and resilience of the person, and to understand that this too will pass.
So basically, we allow the child, as the child becomes an adolescent or an adult, to process what has happened through the course of time as it unfolds, and just take it day by day, step by step. Am I getting that right?
Yes, and to encourage normal, positive, gratifying life. The things that are enjoyable and that are fulfilling, gratifying. I also must say that, at whatever stage of life one is in, these life events are revisited, that They are re-experienced in different forms at different portions of people's lives. These are not things that are, finished and resolved. They're resolved to that point in one's life as they are able to be resolved. And then they recur in other forms.
Do you have, in the last 5 minutes that we have, any other advice for protective mothers and their children who are dealing with hostage situations by abusive fathers?
To trust one's instincts, to be as thoughtful and insightful, to examine your thoughts and feelings and memories, to trust your instincts, and to always be hopeful, to always look for an opening, and to sustain love.
That's a beautiful message of hope. I'm all for that. And, the theme of this show is "This too shall pass." And while it's passing, we will fight for justice for the children and for the protective mothers. And we'll continue to fight for a world where these atrocities are not being enabled and facilitated by the family courts worldwide, and definitely not by Child Protective Services.
Right.
I'm all in agreement with you that family court and CPS needs to be completely overhauled, if not just completely abolished. And we need to start with an entirely new system.
A new consciousness. There must be a new consciousness of civility and psychoanalytic understanding and respect.
Yeah, and a complete 360-degree change of morality in this world, away from pedophilia and pro-child. Again, children are the most important beings on this planet. They are the future of the world. So if we destroy children, we destroy humanity, and we must not allow that to happen collectively. So I'm all for a change in consciousness, a change in awareness, and let's change the world. So that's what this program is all about. So thank you for contributing to that effort, Jill. Wonderful organization you have, wonderful foundation. Thank you also for helping Jasmine, and I'm thanking you also on behalf of her, because she cannot have her voice be heard at this moment.
Her voice is being heard. Her voice is being very loudly heard and is trumpeted, through your gathering of all of the evidence and of your meticulous care for all of these records. Her voice is being very strongly heard.
Thank you. And also thank you on behalf of my mother, who is, she's 82 years old and waiting for her grandchild to be reunited with her. There's a lot of heartache there. And on behalf of the rest of my family and Jasmine's friends and former classmates who are all waiting to be reunited with her, I hope we can get this tragedy to come to a conclusion real soon. And thank you on behalf of all the protective mothers and children watching today for all the information that you shared with us. It's incredibly helpful and insightful. And I hope you will come on a future episode of Hell is for Children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would be delighted. There's so much to cover. There's just so many issues.
Right. Like another one of the issues that I want to cover with you sometime is how the mothers can deal with post-traumatic stress and how they can survive through these ordeals. But that's an entire 2-hour show onto itself. So for now, I'm going to have to thank you. And I'm thanking all my viewers for watching today's episode of Hell is for Children. And I hope to see you all again next week. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.